You see, we'll never allow Jesus to be our wonderful counselor if we are firmly entrenched in the driver's seat of our lives, like firmly gripping that wheel, like I'm willing to let go, because we cannot both lead. We can't both lead our lives. You must follow his lead. And so let's look at the meaning of this phrase, wonderful counselor, because the words wonderful counselor hold a lot of wonderful meaning. The words wonderful counselor in the Hebrew are the words Pele Yawitz. Pele Yawitz. Pele, wonderful. It means beyond our comprehension. It's a word used when something is too wondrous for words. Isaiah said that when Messiah comes, he would be beyond our ability to describe him. Yawitz, the word translated counselor, it means one who advises or instructs or guides. But yet it's specifically talking about someone who does this from a position of authority. So this isn't like somebody you call up for quick advice or your buddy that you get tips from time to time. This is someone who you could bring your most deepest, darkest, troubling moment, and they could confidently lead you out of it. The writer of Hebrews explains why it is that Jesus can be this type of help to us for our problems. It says in Hebrews 4:15, "For we do not have a high priest who is unable to sympathize with our weaknesses, but one who in every respect has been tempted as we are, yet without sin. Let us then, with confidence, draw near to the throne of grace that we may receive mercy and find grace to help in time of need." Our wonderful counselor isn't just someone to rule over us and to make decisions for us like a dictator. No, he's a friend who walked among us, who has journeyed through everything that we have walked through in our lives. You see, church, when you examine the Christmas story, one of the things that you'll see is that Jesus was born amongst the poor and oppressed people. He was amongst the helpless and harassed. And the reason why that's important to note, because as Jesus is going to be our wonderful counselor, he must understand the full range of what it means to be one of us. Fear, rejection, loss, ridicule, anger. Jesus, our high priest, our wonderful counselor, he lived it. If you're trying to find a great counselor for your everyday life, someone to come alongside you to help you from here to there, and you have the option of picking someone who has walked through some of the same struggles that you've walked through, who's been where you've been, or someone who lacks that experience, who might be a great person, but they don't understand where you've been, who are you going to pick? You're going to pick the person with the similar experience. Why? Because those who lack common experience do not have as much perspective to share. Their scope of understanding is just more limited. The Messiah, Jesus Christ, our wonderful counselor, has all of the scope of understanding. Church family, there isn't anything that you have experienced or will experience that our wonderful counselor, Jesus Christ, cannot confidently lead you through. But we must receive the gift of the wonderful counselor in our lives, because the truth is we can be given a gift and not receive it. We can be offered the best gift and not receive it, to push it off like Ahaz. So for the rest of our time, we're going to examine how to receive the gift of our wonderful counselor. And I think there are at least 3 ways that we can apply this to our lives today. And the first being, we must be truthful with ourselves and God. Every good counselor will tell you that until you are completely honest about your issues, you really can't get the help you need. You know, sometimes when we go and sit with somebody who's giving us counsel, we'll share with them 25% of the issue. And then we work our way up to 30%. And then maybe after a while we get to 50%, but we really cannot get the full healing or the full counsel until we share what is truly going on. And you see, there's a tendency to keep the real truth about our problems concealed. And perhaps we do this because we feel the shame of sharing the full extent of our issues. Perhaps it's also because we don't even like to acknowledge it ourselves. There's aspects of who we are, behaviors, attitudes, actions that we don't even fully have worked through ourselves. So how could we share that with someone else? And so we've got to be truthful with ourselves and God, because God's not going to be able to change your life without changing who you are. And so you might be thinking right now, yeah, I hear what you're saying, Pastor Todd. But when the full extent of my problem is revealed, what if God and everybody else in my life just walks away from me? That's the fear, right? The fear is that God is going to reject me, people are going to reject me, and I'm going to tell you, this is where you're just going to have to rely on the promises of our wonderful counselor. You know, Jesus was once talking with a woman at the well who was really struggling. This is recorded for us in John chapter 4. And she had a string of broken marriages, and she was in the midst of an adulterous relationship at the time. Her life was a mess. She completely lacked peace. She was struggling. She kept trying to hide all of this from Jesus over the course of their conversation. She was afraid that if he knew who she really was, that he would walk away from her. And then finally, Jesus said to her, "Look, I know that you have 5 husbands and that you're currently living in adultery now." And Jesus knew that before they started their conversation, and he still came after her. This snapshot of Jesus' ministry was recorded for us in part so that we would know that we can be truthful with God about the midst of our broken life, and he's not going to run out on us. He's not going to reject us. He already knows anyway. But he can lead us with our honesty as we come to him for counsel. He can lead us out of darkness and into the light of life. The second thing we need to understand to receive our wonderful counselor, we must be willing to seek true healing. How many of you like going to the doctor? I mean, you like going to the doctor like a night of fine dining. How many of you love going to the doctor? It's like one hand in here, only one person, 2 people like going to the doctor. Not many of us. Why? Because the doctor might give us a shot that hurts. They may give us news that we don't want to hear. They might give us advice that we don't want to take. They may charge us money we don't have. They may probe us with something that we're not going to talk about that. We don't like going to the doctor mainly because we don't even like the potential of hearing something that we don't want to hear. And this is a similar impulse that drives us away from our wonderful counselor. When the truth is, we must be willing to seek it, that true healing that is available to us. In John chapter 5, again, Jesus comes to a place where he comes to a pool where there are a number of disabled people, and amongst the group gathered, there is a lame man who has been lame for 38 years, basically his whole entire life. And Jesus asks him, "Do you want to be healed?" Now, this is a wild question to ask someone who has been disabled for as long as he has with this debilitating condition. Who wouldn't want to be healed? But there's a reason why Jesus asks him this. You see, while many of us want to experience the blessing and benefits of healing, we don't necessarily want to go through all of the painful process that it's going to take that accompanies that healing. Church, we must go inward with this, like deep inside of who we are, and consider, are there areas of our lives where we need to experience the healing of the wonderful counselor, but we're unwilling to seek out that healing? No doubt in a congregation this size, there are many of us who have sought out the wonderful counselor, and we have found the healing that our souls have longed for, amen? We've heard testimonies from those baptismal waters of people relying on the wonderful counselor, revolutionize their lives. And many of us here have those stories. And our hearts leap when we hear another brother or sister share a story like that. It's one of the best things ever. And this side of heaven, we continually seek him out because we still struggle. But friends, if you are laying on the sidelines waiting for God to fix everything in your life, Jesus poses you the same question that he poses the lame man. Do you want to be healed? That leads us to our third thing we need to understand to receive our wonderful counselor. We must follow his lead. We must follow his lead. In his book, Mere Christianity, C.S. Lewis said, "We are not imperfect creatures who must be improved. We are rebels who must lay down our arms." Lewis goes on to highlight that true relationship with God requires acknowledging our rebellion and willingly laying down our weapons of pride and self-reliance and resistance. You see, we'll never allow Jesus to be our wonderful counselor if we are firmly entrenched in the driver's seat of our lives, like firmly gripping that wheel, like I'm willing to let go, because we cannot both lead. We can't both lead our lives. You must follow his lead. My wife and I are in the process of teaching our teenage daughter how to drive. Why are you laughing? And she's doing great. But I've got to say that sitting in the passenger seat next to my teenage daughter has been one of the more uncomfortable experiences of my life. And it's not anything she's doing, really. And it's not just because I don't have control. That's a lot of it, that I don't have control. It's a lot of my issue. But it's because I don't have control, and while at the same time, I am aware of all of the potential consequences of what we are doing at the moment. If I was teaching her how to drive on a closed course, right? Like imagine I was able to purchase the airstrip at Philadelphia International Airport to teach my daughter how to drive, right? Then it would be stress-free. It'd be I could teach her how to turn, I could teach her how to back up, because there's nothing to hit. But as I drive around our neighborhood, I'm not viewing our neighborhood. Our neighborhood disappears. I'm just seeing all the potential things that could happen around each bend. You see, this illustrates why we struggle to let go of the wheel with God. We think he isn't sympathetic to our struggles. We think he isn't concerned with what we are concerned with. It's as if we believe that we have a better perception of our own reality than the Almighty. When in reality, God knows what you need more than you know what you need. And God cares about your future, friend, far more than you care about your own future. That is the truth. And yet we often struggle to believe that in such a way that we allow him unhindered access to be our wonderful counselor, to drive us through the way that he knows better, far better than we ever could. But God's word is faithful in helping us to know how to fix this, because this isn't a problem that people just in 2024 are struggling with. This is a problem that people have been struggling with from the dawn of time. In James chapter 1, verses 5, 6, and 7, we read, "If any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you. But when you ask, you must believe and not doubt, because the one who doubts is like a wave of the sea, blown and tossed by the wind. That person should not expect to receive anything from the Lord." To believe and not doubt God, that requires faith. And with the faith of God, we will not be all over the place like the waves described here in James. With true faith, we will not be perfect, but we are steady. We have decided that we're going to follow Jesus in our lives, and we're not turning back. We've made that decision. And those of us who have made that decision, we have given God the blank check. We have surrendered our will to his. We have welcomed the wonderful counselor to rule in our hearts and in our lives. But friends, if you have not made that decision, you are missing out on the true gift of Christmas.